What if the person you trusted most, your best friend, your own family, was the one plotting to destroy your happiness all along? She smiled at my wedding. She held my hand when I cried. And the whole time she was burying the truth 6 feet under a pile of stolen letters. This is the story of how one jealous heart tore 3 lives apart. Forever. Jealous folks are about as dangerous as a rattlesnake in tall grass. You don't see them coming until it's too late. They'll do things so low down and rotten, you couldn't even dream them up in your worst nightmare. Things nobody would expect. All just to cool that green fire burning inside them, even if it means burning down someone else's whole life to do it. By the time they realize what they've done, the damage is already sitting there like a tombstone. And what good does regret do after the killing's already been done? My own life got torn apart by a girl just like that. And she wasn't some stranger either. She was my cousin, my best friend, my sister-in-law, closer to me than my own sisters ever were. I never in a million years thought she'd be the one to bury me alive while I was still breathing. I wouldn't have believed it, not for 1 second, if she hadn't looked me dead in the eye and confessed it herself. But what good does a confession do after everything's already turned to ash? Her sorry words couldn't hand me back the life she took from me. To this day, I curse the day I ever set foot on my aunt's farm. She lived clear across the state line. My mama and my aunt were close as 2 peas in a pod, and I reckon that's why us kids took to each other the same way. But you know what folks say, don't you? Wherever hearts grow close, heartbreak comes creeping in right behind them, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Seems like heartbreak's always lurking in the shadows, watching for the day 2 hearts get tangled up together, just so it can rip them apart again. Maybe the tears shed over that kind of parting are exactly what feeds it. That's why it never lets true love rest easy. I reckon fate had a hand in it too, sitting there patient as a spider, waiting on its moment. And when fate finally makes its move, it comes down like a wolf on the henhouse, tearing hearts to pieces without a lick of mercy. To this day, I still can't rightly say who's to blame for my own ruin. Right after I graduated high school, I packed my bags and went to stay with my aunt on her farm. Our family wasn't real big. On my mama's side, my aunt was about the only close kin we had left. No uncles, no nothing. But my aunt loved me something fierce, and my cousins were the best folks you ever met. We had ourselves a time together. Laughing, playing cards on the porch, singing old hymns, raising a ruckus all over that farmhouse from sunup to sundown. That place was never short on joy, not for 1 single day. I got so caught up in the fun of it all I plumb forgot I even had a home to go back to. My uncle and aunt treated me like their own. Filled in for my folks something wonderful. I got so comfortable out there I forgot I was ever supposed to leave. Then one day a letter came from my daddy. He wrote to tell me I'd passed my exams with the highest marks in my class. That meant I could stick around a little while longer, seeing as the next school term hadn't started up yet. My cousins about jumped out of their boots with excitement. We decided right then and there to throw ourselves a little picnic out by the creek to celebrate. My aunt and uncle gave their blessing, but we had ourselves a problem. Who was going to drive us out there and how? My uncle had to take the truck himself, on account of some business trip to the next town over. Looked like the whole picnic plan was fixing to fall clean through. Clyde was my aunt's oldest boy, a couple years older than me. I called him Cousin Clyde. He piped up and said he'd borrow a truck from one of his buddies. His younger brother chimed in. Why don't you just ask Jesse? His daddy's out of town this week. Bet he's got the truck sitting right there in the yard. Well, I'll be you're right, Clyde said, snatching up the phone. He called Jesse, and sure enough, the boy agreed to lend us his truck. We stayed up half the night planning where we'd go and what we'd pack. Between passing my exams and my cousins making such a fuss over it, I was tickled pink. If I'd been back home, this day wouldn't have meant near as much. It was just me, Mama, Daddy, and my little brother back home, quiet as church on a Monday. But out here we played cards clean into the night, packing picnic baskets between hands of rummy. Finally Clyde said, "All right now, we best turn in. Big day of travelin' tomorrow. Can't have a good time if we're all wore out." So off to bed we went. I laid there a good long while, too excited to sleep, thinking about Mama and Daddy and wishing they could have been there too. Somewhere between all that thinking, sleep finally snuck up and carried me off. Come morning, my cousin Maybelle shook me awake. "Get up, Daisy, we're running late. Everybody's ready and the truck's already here." Jesse dropped it off a good while back and headed on out. I scrambled up and got dressed quick. When I made it out to the front room, Maybelle was asking Clyde, "Ain't Jesse coming with us?" "Nah," Clyde said. Said this was more of a family thing, didn't want to intrude. "Well, that just don't sit right," Maybelle said. "We borrowed the man's truck and didn't even think to invite him along. Clyde, you oughta call him back." Clyde looked over at me with a raised eyebrow. "This here shindig's on account of Daisy. Ask her." "Shoot, it's y'all's business," I said. "I don't even know the man, makes no difference to me one way or the other." Maybelle pressed on, so Clyde called him back up. Jesse said he had some things to tend to first, but he'd catch up with us later if Clyde told him where we were headed. Clyde gave him directions. Truth be told, the whole thing struck me as mighty peculiar. Where I come from, we didn't carry on like that with folks we barely knew. I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling, wondering how a stranger tagging along was going to change the whole day. We finally hit the road. Maybelle had left her wristwatch back at the house and kept pestering me every 5 minutes asking what time it was. I didn't understand why she was so all-fired anxious about the clock. Maybe every minute felt like an hour to her for some reason. Finally, I got so tired of her asking, I just took my watch off and handed it to her. "Here, quit frettin' and keep this." She looked a little sheepish taking it, but she kept it all the same. Maybe she was embarrassed about asking so much herself. We had ourselves a real good time out there. But I couldn't shake this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, knowing Jesse was coming. Even though his family went way back with my cousins, something about him weighed on my thoughts, something powerful, like he wasn't just coming to visit, but coming to take something of mine. I finally asked Clyde, "So what's this friend of yours like anyway?" "He's good people," Clyde said. "Like a brother to me. You'll meet him, you'll see. Jesse's one of the best fellas you'll ever come across. Boy livens up a room the second he walks in." I just shrugged it off, though I was a little surprised at myself for even asking. After lunch, we sat down to play some cards we brought along. We were right in the middle of a hand when somebody hollered, "Jesse's here." I cussed the poor fella out in my head before he'd even said a word. Everybody swarmed around him soon as he stepped out. I didn't even bother looking his way, let alone going over to say hello. I got a real good sense of how well liked he was, on account of once he showed up, I was sitting there by my lonesome while everybody crowded around him laughing and carrying on. Maybelle's voice rang out louder than anybody's, her laughter filling up the whole clearing. After a spell, Clyde called out to me, "Daisy, come on over here." "Y'all plumb forgot I was even here with ya," I said. "Now that ain't true," Clyde said. "This whole shindig's for you, remember?" Jesse spoke up. "So this is our guest of honor, Miss Daisy? Well, hello there. Real pleasure to meet you." I said it was nice meeting him too, just being polite. He was studying my face, something fierce. "You're lying, ain't you?" "No, I ain't," I said. "Your face says otherwise. Take some nerve telling a fella straight to his face you're happy to meet him when you clearly ain't." I looked up at him, startled, my heart skipping something fierce. There was a mischief dancing in his eyes and a grin tugging at his mouth. He was a right handsome young man, I'll say that much. Looking at him then, it was like a bolt of lightning struck me clean through the chest. I got so flustered by my own feelings, I turned my head away quick as I could. That fear that had been sitting in my gut all day wasn't unfounded after all. He really was a thief, all right. He'd gone and stolen my heart clean out from under me with nothing but that grin of his. I didn't figure it out till later, when my eyes kept wandering back to him without me even meaning to. Every stray thought I had somehow found its way back to his face. I kept telling myself, Lord have mercy, what in the world is happening to me? The same fella I couldn't stand not an hour ago had gone, and moved right into my heart like he owned the place. We started packing up to head home. On the way out, we'd all been crammed into one truck like sardines. Since Jesse had driven his own, Maybelle and Clyde's little brother rode with him on the way back to spread everybody out. Jesse was a funny, easygoing fella, the kind who'd have your stomach hurting from laughing so hard. But I never said a direct word to him the whole ride, and he never said one to me neither. He spent the whole time talking with Maybelle. Felt like he'd cast some kind of spell over me, but I was trying my darndest to keep my distance. Falling in love wasn't something I had any business doing, so I told myself I wouldn't go down that road. But he kept creeping into my heart whether I wanted him to or not. After that, he started coming around the farm once or twice a week. He and Clyde were thick as thieves. Being the friendly type, he got along easy with everybody in the house. Whenever he'd come by, I'd say my hellos and then slip on off to my room. I wouldn't come back out till he'd gone, even though every minute he was there felt like it dragged on forever. Felt like every second stretched out into a whole year. But this was just the beginning. I wanted to stop myself right then and there, on account of I'd always heard if you nip these things in the bud early, you save yourself a heap of trouble down the R. But that's easier said than done. Love don't have a beginning or an end. Whatever fire it lights when it first takes hold, that same fire keeps burning clear through to the end. If love waxes and wanes, then it ain't really love, it's just some kind of arrangement on account of two people become each other's necessity. Living life alone is a hard road to hoe. Love ain't something you can measure out and ration. Truth is, the more you try to cage that feeling, the wilder it burns. I couldn't shake him loose either. He'd settled into my heart same as the first day, and my heart had gotten used to him being there. Sometimes it scared me something awful, wondering what would become of me, what road I'd wandered down. I was head over heels for him and he didn't have the first idea. Jesse didn't know what I carried for him in my heart, but that was just my own worry talking. If two hearts feel the same way, then love's got a chance to take root and grow. Turned out he felt the same way about me. We just never had the chance, or maybe never worked up the nerve to say it plain to each other. And once I found out he cared for me the same way, staying away from him got near impossible. But I reckon partin' ways is just pa. One evening my aunt and the rest of the family had gone off to a wedding. My aunt had begged me to come along, said I'd get lonesome and scared sitting home by myself, but I told her I'd be fine. Then the doorbell rang, and it about made me jump clean out of my skin. I crept up to the door, heart hammering. Turned out it was Jesse. I told him nobody was home, but by then he'd already made himself comfortable inside. "How can you say nobody's home," he said, "when you're standin' right there? I've been waitin' on a chance like this for weeks. There's something I gotta tell you." I got nervous. "All right, go on then." "Truth is," he said, "first time I laid eyes on you, I about fell over. It's like everything I ever pictured in my head just up and walked out into the real world. You're exactly how I always imagined the girl I'd fall for would be. Maybe you won't believe me, and I ain't gonna force you to, but I had to say my piece on account of feelings like these can't stay locked up forever. Believe me or don't, that's your business, but I trust you won't go and mock something that's true and honest." By then, I'd already lost my heart to him too. Admitting it didn't shame me none, seeing as he'd already laid his cards on the table. I answered his honesty with honesty of my own, and it made him happier than I'd ever seen him. I don't reckon he expected his question to get answered with a yes. Standing there making promises with Jesse, it never once crossed my mind that he might have other girls sweet on him too. I sure didn't know that Maybelle had gone and put him up on a pedestal in her own heart. Right around then my daddy showed up to fetch me home. It threw me into a fit, on account of he wanted to head back that very same day, and I couldn't bear the thought of leaving without letting Jesse know. My aunt talked daddy into staying 2 more days, and I about could have kissed her for it. The next day I told Jesse we were fixing to leave, and it about broke his heart. He set up a place for us to meet outside the house before I left. While he was telling me where to meet him, Maybelle overheard the whole thing somehow. She showed up at that same park, which sat close to the house. Jesse asked me, "Ain't there any way you could stay a few more days?" "Don't matter how long I stay," I said. "Eventually I gotta go home." I gave him my address and took his down too. We settled on days to write letters back and forth. Right about then Maybelle came walking up. Seeing her caught us both off guard, but she didn't let on a thing, just asked Jesse plain, "You really love Daisy?" He didn't say a word, just nodded his head yes. That short time we had together, and the love that came with it, turned into the sickness that would plague the rest of my days. When I got home I told Maybelle everything, even that Jesse and I planned to keep writing. Back home, I'd feel like something was missing every day until his letter showed up in the mailbox. Once it arrived, all that sadness would melt clean away. But little by little, his letters stopped coming altogether. I wrote him letter after letter, but I never got a single reply. Around that time Maybelle came out to visit me. I was tickled pink, figuring I'd finally have someone to pour my heart out to. Seeing the state I was in, she said, Look what you've done to yourself over some no-good two-timing fella. You know he's already gone and married somebody else out there." I couldn't hardly believe Jesse was capable of being unfaithful, but I couldn't just brush off what Maybelle was telling me either. All the evidence seemed to point the same direction. Even with him never answering, I'd kept right on writing, and he never sent back a single word. That could only mean one thing. He really had been unfaithful. Under them circumstances, what else was I supposed to do but believe Maybelle? I trusted her as my dearest friend in the world, so I took every word she said as gospel truth. She said such things against Jesse that I truly turned bitter and cold toward him. Meanwhile, she'd gone and told Jesse, "Daisy ain't the girl you think she is. Fact is, she's sweet on my brother Clyde, and the two of them are fixing to get married real soon." Hearing that, Jesse's heart turned cold toward me. Not long after, my aunt came calling on my family, asking for my hand for Clyde. I never once thought that way about Clyde, didn't have the first clue what was going on. This time Maybelle was the one pushing me, saying I shouldn't waste my whole life pining over some cheating fella, that I ought to just marry Clyde instead. Jesse's supposed betrayal had rattled me so bad. I just let myself get swept along with whatever the current brought. My folks figured it was a good match and gave their blessing, and I went along without putting up a lick of a fight. For a while after the wedding, Clyde treated me just fine. But somewhere along the line something shifted in him. He got sullen and short-tempered, quit talking to me altogether. Anytime I tried to say something, he'd snap at me something fierce. One evening, talk turned to old friends and I asked, "How come y'all never invited Jesse to the wedding?" That question set him off like a struck match. "So you could go mooning over your sweetheart?" he barked. I hollered right back, "Clyde, watch your tone with me, I ain't your property." Them words set off a storm I never saw coming. He beat me so bad I passed clean out. The whole house threw itself into an uproar. My aunt had to pull him off me by main force and sent him packing out the door. When I finally came to, Maybelle was sitting there beside me, crying her eyes out something awful. "Daisy," she said, "forgive me. This is all my fault, all of it." I looked at her, not understanding a lick of what she meant, and asked her to explain herself plain. She said, "Them letters you wrote to Jesse? I'm the one who handed 'em over to my brother. You're wondering how I ever got your letters in the first place, ain't you? Well, you told Jesse everything and he trusted me as a friend, told me every last detail about you. He'd bring his letters to me thinking I'd pass 'em along to you, but instead I started keeping every last one. Truth is, I was sweet on Jesse myself, and I made up that whole story about him being unfaithful. I told him you were carrying a torch for Clyde, just to keep him from ever reaching out to you again, and it worked. He went quiet as a church mouse. He thought he was handing his letters over to a trusted friend, entrusting them to me so I'd get him to you safe and sound. Your marriage to Clyde, that was my doing too, start to finish. Once you two wed, I made sure Jesse knew it, proved to him I'd been telling the truth all along about you and Clyde. Then I went and told Jesse he ought to marry me instead. But he really did love you true. He turned me down flat and left the country altogether. All he ever said to me was, "Maybelle, I ain't the kind to settle for a consolation prize. Everything about Daisy reminds me of what we had. And you're her friend, her own sister-in-law now besides. I can't go marrying into a family where she's living happy with somebody else." That's when I got so mad. I went and handed every last one of your letters over to my brother Clyde. Then she started up begging my forgiveness all over again. But after my whole life had already come crashing down around me, what earthly good would forgiving her do? Them love letters sunk their fangs deep into Clyde's mind and never let go. He wouldn't so much as look my direction after that, wouldn't even come home no more. I told Maybelle, "If you'd have come to me even once, just once, I'd have gone and fixed your marriage to him myself. By the time you told me the truth, I'd already accepted my fate, already given my whole heart to Clyde. If only you'd trusted me. I'd have begged Jesse myself for your happiness, gotten down on my knees for your sake if I had to. I know for a fact he never would have turned me away. But look what you went and did instead. You didn't just ruin your own life, you tore apart 3 lives at once. And he's gonna carry the weight of thinking, I betrayed him for the rest of his days." Clyde don't think much of me these days, and truth be told, I can't rightly blame him none. If I was standing in his boots, I reckon I'd have done the same exact thing. Any man reading love letters his own wife wrote to another fella, Clyde or otherwise, would have reacted a whole lot worse than he did. You went and dragged my good name through the mud in his eyes so bad. I'm ashamed of myself just thinking on it. Maybelle kept saying, no, Daisy, it'll be all right. I'll straighten out Clyde's misunderstanding myself. But I couldn't bring myself to believe her no more. How could I, after everything? My worst fears came true anyhow. Some time later, I went home to visit my folks. Clyde had been scarce, nobody knew where he'd got off to, but the second I left, he came around to the house and sent over the divorce papers. Maybelle, who'd sworn up and down, go on and visit your folks, sister, I'll set Clyde straight the minute he gets back, had gone and put the final nail in my coffin instead. I ask you, is that what a friend does? Is that what family's supposed to look like? Done. Done.